This is my $200 experiment. I bought this watch 2 years ago as an experiment. So this watch is an absolute monolith of steel and glass. Let me wear it so at least you see it. Perhaps you hear that. You hear the $200 jangling in there. It's got an automatic movement. It's got a retrograde date. A retrograde date, yes. And it works. It's a dual time. You have 2 time zones. And it's got a power reserve complication. All of this is a $200 experiment for me. Now it is a Chinese watch as denoted by the red star on the dial, and this is more evident when you take a look at the case back as well. The watch is large, thick, heavy, and an absolute unit on the wrist. And all of these things are what make it an experiment to me. I didn't go into this postulation wanting a watch with all these specifics. It was more of a, I have to give this a shot because where else am I going to find this for 200 bucks? I've never even heard of such a thing, let alone seen one. Some of you may see this as a preposterous idea of a watch, and you're not alone in that. I did also see it just as that, but there's another side to it, and that's what I want to share. So the first question before I bought this piece was, how quickly is the excitement of this watch going to die out? And how quickly is it going to become cumbersome? I knew from the get-go, it's a temporary fancy and not a realistic watch. But I'm not looking for realism in watches. I'm looking for something cool. Realism ends after your third piece. That's when you start seeking out fun stuff. And then you slowly get into the what complication do I not have in my collection, which is completely arbitrary, but something new. So if you are wondering how quick does it become cumbersome, well, the answer is 4 months. 4 months for me. 4 months in, I stopped wearing this watch almost completely. The novelty wore off and it became cumbersome. So is that it? Is that it to this video? Well, no. There's another side to it. But first, let me say what I mean by cumbersome. Let's begin with the thickness. Coincidentally, I also bought this watch at the start of summer, and 4 months later, I needed to sleeve up. That's where the difficulties began. This watch doesn't really work well with sleeves. It's about 14-15 millimeters thick. However, it somehow manages to hide its thickness a little when glanced at. But when you need the sleeves on the wrist, you don't want the watch on the wrist. The case diameter of 45 millimeters is both annoying and novel. I didn't mind it as much as the lugs though. The lugs are almost Nomos-like. They're very much Nomos-like. And that's really not a compliment here. These two put together make this watch larger than the average Panerai. It's certainly not a daily watch. It's not even a weekly wearer. You really have to be in the mood to wear this specific thing and not want something convenient on the wrist. And for me, that's really not that often. So then basically I didn't wear this watch for a year. So I bought it, wore it for 4 months, winter hit, and then I actually didn't wear it for a whole year. And throughout that time, I thought about selling it because what's the point? The novelty kind of wore off, it became cumbersome, I didn't want to wear it. But the thing is, this is such a specifically unique watch and nobody really knows about it that if you sell it, you kind of lose everything on it. So there's no point in selling it, you just rather keep it. And then you're in this new state of, I'm going to keep this watch. I bought it for a novelty case. It's not really that novel to me. So you try to rediscover the novelty in it. And that's exactly what I did. And it actually worked. The thing is, I really like all the complications and the features that it has to offer. But I'm battling with the idea of whether the complications are all that meaningful when the watch as a whole is not. Sometimes I wear this piece because I'm wildly fascinated by it. It looks cool. It's something so absurd in comparison to every three-hander out there. And it's got really cool complications. I like the retrograde date. Well, you see that in action once. Actually, you don't even see that in action. You only see that in action literally when you don't wear this watch, and then you need to set the date, so you go past the 31st, and then you see that flick back, but most of the time you don't see it. Other days when I wear this, it's a hunk of steel, and I'm not that fascinated by it. I'm keeping this one though, as I mentioned, because it makes no sense to sell it, and because I like the option of wearing it on that rare occasion. Well, at least that's what I tell myself. And it seems to work out. Ask me again tomorrow, perhaps I'll have a new perspective on it, because these opinions are subject to change. Right now it's really unique and cool to me, but other times it's just something I can't be bothered to deal with. So in my second year wearing this piece, I slowly began to figure out what I could reasonably ask of it. So this brought in a new wave of acceptance and satisfaction of this piece being in my collection. It's too silly to compare this to any other watch. This was novelty based from the get-go, and somehow I decided to apply it to an everyday context. That was my first mistake. It should have remained novelty based, meaning I should have never expected to wear it that often. I should have only worn it on that rare occasion from the start. There's no schedule or plan that can involve this piece. This is quite literally only something to wear on a whim, and not a long one at that. What I've come to understand is that's how I can get all the uniqueness from wearing this piece without all the detractions. My watch collecting philosophy is currently based on unique complications or something unique about the watch. So the traditional three-hander really does not appeal to me. And for that, this is a perfect use case to satisfy that interest. But sometimes you just want a watch to tell the time, something that's always on your wrist, and that's not this piece. And that's why I think this is a really random experimental purchase, and for a $200 experiment, it's a damn good one. Let me know if there are any watches in your collection you bought on a whim, or you bought as an experiment, or you bought just for the novelty factor, knowing that you would not want to wear this often.